The spread of COVID-19 across the world may have brought many things to a standstill, but it failed to halt ongoing troubles, conflicts, and emerging threats. And much of what the virus failed to stop, it made much worse.
2020 was just days old when the world learned the U.S. had assassinated Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in a drone attack in Baghdad. Less than a week later, Iran mistakenly shot down a Ukrainian passenger plane, killing all 176 people on board. In late November, a top Iranian nuclear scientist was assassinated. Tehran blamed Israel.
In due time, they will answer for this crime.
January 31st. The United Kingdom officially withdrew from the European Union, but it would take nearly a year of fractious trade talks before both sides finally reach an agreement.
And I believe it will be the basis of a happy and successful and stable partnership with our friends in the EU for years to come.
Global stock markets collapsed in the spring as COVID-19 crippled economies, one of the steepest declines in stock market history. As summer approached,
eradicate them. As gruesome as that sounds, that's our goal.
News of the deadly Asian giant hornet's arrival in the U.S. struck fear in the hearts of American beekeepers and captured the internet's attention. Elsewhere, governments made inroads in their battle against the worst locust invasion in decades, the insect swarming continents and threatening food supplies. June, India and Pakistan's long-running dispute over Kashmir turned into a standoff involving 3 nuclear powers after Chinese and Indian forces clashed in the contested region. The battleground saw another round of deadly fighting in November between India and Pakistan. July in the South Caucasus. Deadly fighting broke out on the border between longtime rivals Armenia and Azerbaijan, and again in September in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh province. Heavy fighting escalated into a full-scale regional war. August in Lebanon, a massive ammonium nitrate explosion at the port of Beirut killed more than 200 people, injured thousands, and left more than 250,000 people homeless. The escalating dispute between NATO members Greece and Turkey over gas drilling rights in the eastern Mediterranean Sea prompted international fears of a militarized conflict. Reports that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was poisoned with a Novichok nerve agent drew sanctions from the European Union and the United Kingdom against Russian officials. The Kremlin denied its Federal Security Service, the FSB, was involved.
If they had wanted to fatally poison him, they would have brought it to the end.
September marked 75 years since the end of World War II and the birth of the United Nations.
Probably the only period in the history of humankind where the big powers had not wars among them.
But in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, the UN's doors largely stayed closed, and the annual meeting of world leaders took place remotely for the first time in history. The October beheading of a French teacher near Paris and a deadly knife attack in Nice put France on its highest ever security threat level. Days later, another terror attack, this time in Vienna, prompted other European countries to also go on alert.
The attacks that France has experienced, that Austria experienced a few days ago in Vienna, show us that the terrorist risk is everywhere.
November, armed conflict erupted in the Tigray region of Ethiopia between the regional and federal governments. The violence forced tens of thousands of people to flee into eastern Sudan, where the UN says a full-scale humanitarian crisis is unfolding.
It's spiraling out of control with appalling impact on civilians.
As the year draws to a close, Syria's 9 years of conflict will soon extend into a decade with no end in sight. Yemen remains the world's worst humanitarian crisis, on the brink of famine as war rages on. Opposing sides in Libya's long-running conflict have reached a historic ceasefire deal, but deep political differences remain. And in Afghanistan, America edged closer to ending its longest war in history, nearly 20 years, after U.S. President Donald Trump announced a troop drawdown.
This may only just be a short list of the year's major events, but what they all have in common is that their impact will reverberate well into 2021. Liling, CGTN, New York.